Joining us from Kansas City as he is covering the Big 12 basketball tournament, Kirk Bohls of the Austin American-Statesman. Kirk, I know you had some travel delays getting to KC, but glad to hear you made it, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So it's looking more and more like the Big 12 is going to undergo some sort of change come late May, early June following the next conference meeting. From the Texas side, what is the latest you are hearing on any potential changes coming to the conference?
Not a whole lot, and that's been part of the problem, Matt, is that Texas has kind of gone through a regime change, if you will. They've got, in no particular order, they've got a new chancellor, the guy that engineered the raid on Osama bin Laden, Bill McRaven. They've got a new president, Gregory Fentis, who's a chemical engineer with very little athletic background. And they have a new athletic director, Mike Parent, is a former Longhorn football player from the 60s who's been a trial lawyer his whole life. So they've all been on board, less than a year and a half at most. And so they're pretty much holding their cards pretty close to the vest. And it's hard to get a whole lot of concrete information out of them as they keep telling us they're trying to gather information and then they'll make their decision from there.
Now, from what I'm hearing, maybe you're hearing the same thing. It seems that any expansion talk would be contingent on a conference television network being developed, and rumors point to the Longhorn network being folded into that Big 12 network. Assuming UT can continue their financial take as currently constructed, which I believe is about $15 million a year they take home from that, would this be a feasible task? And are Texas officials coming around on the idea, do you think, for the betterment of the conference as a whole?
Well, that's maybe the whole linchpin for the whole moving forward for the Big 12. And what does happen is how much Texas is willing to compromise, how much they're willing to give in. It's been a financial success for the University of Texas. As you said, they average about $15 million, and that contract has 20 years to run from the origin of the formation of the Longhorn Network. So that's a lot to give up. And even though it's been a financial windfall, it's been a real boondoggle for the Big 12 moving forward. And I think most people within the conference would say it had a direct influence on the departures of the four schools from the Big 12 in terms of A&M, Missouri, Nebraska, and Colorado. And I think for sure it had a lot to do with the departures of A&M and Nebraska. So the question is, will they be willing to kind of give up that contract and fold it into a larger Big 12 conference-wide network that could include expansion or not? And I think they're willing to talk at this point, Matt. I don't think they've made a decision yet. I think they're still gleaning information, and I think they'll probably convene once they have all their information before they make a decision. I think that what they told the conference, Matt, is that we're willing to listen. We haven't made any decision on this, but we'll listen to whatever you have to say.
Now, should that network be transitioned and developed hypothetically, it seems expansion would be the next topic of discussion. It's clear, and Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby even confirmed that multiple firms have been hired to assess potential additions and what that would mean to a conference television network. Have you heard anything about either of the firms that they've hired presenting out to the conference, and do you think we're getting any closer to a decision from the other members of the conference?
Well, I think they're still in the process. There may be 40, 45 different solutions to this, and I think they're going to vet each and every one of them. And these data analytical firms that they're hired is to research and to vet these issues is going to be very telling. And that's why I think that into May, early June meetings that the league will have could really be the next step in this whole process. I think they'll make some hard decisions then. As you know, Oklahoma President David Boren has kind of taken the lead on this whole thing, and he's been pushing expansion and been right in the middle of that. And I think part of that is, he kind of stepped into any of that void that Texas filled when DeLoss Dodds, the AD, and Bill Powers, the president, were at the top of the helm. So, I think it's a possibility that it can happen because this has kind of been lingering for a long time. And I've talked to a whole bunch of the ADs in the conference, and they seem to be pretty split. They're not totally sold on a conference championship game because it would force a rematch and the chance of an upset. But by the same token, that they want to listen. And then don't ever forget that other factor, Matt, that always rears its head, and that's money. Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner, has said that a conference championship game could bring in 25 to 35 million. I don't know if those are hard figures he has, but say somewhere in between, say it's 30 million, and you have 10 schools. That's $3 million per school. And if you're one of the smaller schools, like maybe an Iowa State or a Kansas, that thinks, boy, we've got no chance of playing that game, I'll take an extra $3 million. So that would lend some fuel to maybe adopting a conference championship game. And then you address the whole thing. Do you want a rematch, or would we be better served by having a conference championship game with 2 more members, so we don't have to have a rematch? We can just have 2 divisions.
I'm talking with Kirk Bohls of the Austin American-Statesman. Now, UConn spent a little bit of money on some billboards and a full-page spread in one of the Dallas papers this past week, really showcasing their national championship history, as the University of Connecticut has won more national titles than any other Big 12 institution going back to 1999. I'm not sure if you saw the ads, but what was your impression, if you did, of those advertisements, and how was it perceived down in the Texas area?
I think it's very smart. I think, as you know, Cincinnati has also kind of aggressively put its best foot forward. So I had no problem with Connecticut doing that. I put Connecticut on my personal list of teams and programs that the Big 12 should definitely look at. They do make a lot of sense. You mentioned the basketball champions that they have, the men and the women, and what a shot in the arm that would give. And you could say, well, Big 12 do pretty good in basketball and got the #1 RPI, but still, they've only got the Kansas National Championship in basketball during the life of the Big 12, and UConn would certainly add to that. There's no question about the women, since they're the New York Yankees of women's basketball. I think the other thing, it was add a terrific travel partner for West Virginia. I know West Virginia and Gordon G., their president, has pushed strong for expansion and maybe to ease their travel geography concerns a little bit. So I think it makes sense from that standpoint. And just this proximity to ESPN and Bristol makes a lot of sense. And you can, every time you have a home game, you can run your coaches up through there. That's all about exposure and recruiting. So, the one bugaboo is football. Football hasn't been great at UConn, and that's usually been the driving force, because basketball has not historically moved the needle in all these expansion moves. But, the Big 12 may be operating from a position of need and necessity, and they might have to overlook the football and hope the UConn football brand improves, because, somebody look at it as desperation, as though you so incensed and so eager to expand that they would consider seriously leaving and going to the SEC or trying to move to the Big Ten. I think if it was up to David Boyd, I think you would. So, I applaud UConn's effort. This is big boy politics, and you got to get in the middle of it. So, I think the Huskies do exactly what they should.
No, it's funny you mentioned the Huskies football program. I don't know how many people know or not, but if UConn did join the conference, they would actually be ranked 3rd with the most players currently signed with NFL teams. So based on what you said, do you think there's maybe a perception issue with what the UConn football program brings? And what's the overall impression of UConn as a whole in terms of the potential value they would bring both athletically and academically to a conference?
Well, I would say, despite the numbers that you just gave me, UConn has pretty much been invisible as a football entity. Otherwise, Randy Edsel would have never left, would he? I don't think they move the needle at all as a football member. I know Hofstra turns out some football members for the NFL every now and then, and Texas has not. Texas has kind of been on the decline. So, I think that's the thing, and I don't know what their facilities are like football-wise, or their recruiting reach. I don't know. I haven't studied their attendance figures either. So I know it's considered a basketball school on a par with Kansas in the Big 12. But I think they do have a national brand, and I think the two big fish, if you will, out there, Matt, are UConn and BYU. And they probably make the most sense for us. A magnitude of scope, a national brand, a reach with the fans across the nation, no question about BYU. But a lot of people think, well, if BYU was that strong a brand and that attractive and appealing, the Big 12 already would have scooped them up. So, but I think UConn could be a rising brand. I think it could be every bit as attractive as, say, a Cincinnati, which we talked about earlier, or either the Florida schools, Central Florida or South Florida. They're both large schools in a recruiting market that is a growing market, and those along with, say, a Memphis or Houston, or other possibilities. So I think the other thing with UConn, gives you another state. It gives you another regional market for television. So that's the thing, and that's the thing that hurts Houston the most. People don't really know what Houston brings other than a very successful of late football program and improving basketball program. But most of the eyeballs in Houston are already connected to the Big 12. So that's one thing I think in UConn's favor as well.
And then final question for Kirk Bohls of the Austin American-Statesman. Switching gears to the event you are covering for the remainder of the week, Big 12 basketball has been a pleasant surprise in terms of how deep the conference has been this year. How do you think the conference tournament is going to play out, and do you think the conference is really relishing the opportunity to be really the showcase tournament this week?
Oh, yeah, it does, and it always sells out here at the Sprint Center in Kansas City. And, I think Kansas is one about 6 of the 12 in Bill Self's tenure at Lawrence. So it's been such an exciting conference season for basketball. I'm not sure I've enjoyed watching Big 12 basketball more than I have this year. And it's because it's so deep, top to bottom. Yeah, TCU is not doing well, but the fact that they're mostly considered to be a lock for 7 bids, 7 out of 10, amazing. I mean, those are like former Big East numbers when they got, 10 out of 16 that one year. So it's like almost any of the top 6, I think, could win this thing here in Kansas City. And the focus is going to be in March in the NCAA tournament, as you know, and the fact that they haven't been putting teams in the Final Four with regularity has hurt the image of the conference. So it's kind of put up or shut up for the league. I mean, it's been a great league. And Buddy Hield should be, I think, the National Player of the Year for Oklahoma. Just had a terrific year. Texas Tech is going to be in the NCAA tournament for first time in about 30 years almost. So it's been an exciting brand, and I'm looking forward to the tournament here in Kansas City and how they do in March. It's just going to be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, thanks, Kirk, for joining. Definitely enjoy the tournament this week, and definitely look forward to catching up with you down the line should any expansion news be breaking.
Would love to talk to you. Enjoyed the visit with you, man.